So the government of Venezuela has called on the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to violate the U.S. To investigate the U.S., I should say, for the unilateral sanctions that have been placed on the country of Venezuela during the Trump administration's kind of reign of terror in a way in Latin America. And it's I mean, they're a violation of international law. They're violation of U.S. law. It's a crime against humanity. It disproportionately affects the civilian population in Venezuela, and it's just horrible and needs to be condemned. And I hope the ICC takes this investigation very seriously and calls out the U.S. for these illegal sanctions that they have placed on Venezuela and the people of Venezuela that have been hugely negatively impacted by them. Although this is from Common Dreams. Venezuela's top diplomat called in the ICC Thursday to open an investigation into the sanctions imposed on his country by the Trump administration, saying the economic warfare has caused the suffering of millions of Venezuelans. Quote, our government is seeking refuge with international law, Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza said Thursday. We are convinced the consequences of the unilateral measures by the United States constitute crimes against humanity, against the civilian population. Indeed, I don't see how you could view it in any other way unless you're just a complete, just little Trump robot Republican hack or Democratic establishment hack, because these sanctions have just been hugely devastating towards the civilian population of Venezuela, and kudos to the government of Venezuela for filing this complaint for the ICC to investigate this. Let's see. What justifies sanctions on a transport company, a public service? President Nicolas Maduro said after the sanctions were announced. What harm do they do to me? The damage is done to the people of Venezuela. Exactly. The U.S. has targeted Venezuelan officials and state-run businesses with several rounds of sanctions since Maduro won re-election in 2018, an election that the Trump administration claimed was illegitimate. It wasn't. In January 2019, the U.S. sanctioned state-owned oil company PDVSA in an attempt to pressure Maduro to resign, as the Trump administration became the first of a few dozen countries to claim opposition leader Juan Guaido was the legitimate president of Venezuela. So just to put that in perspective, what Trump and some of these other ridiculous world leaders like the so-called liberal Justin Trudeau in Canada also recognize Juan Guaido as the current president, even though he wasn't elected to that position. So that would basically be like, let's say Russia. I don't have anything against Russia, obviously. The Russian government placed sanctions on the government of the United States because they didn't think that Trump was the legitimate president of the United States. And actually, they would have a bigger claim there because Hillary Clinton actually got more votes. So that would be, a similar thing. And then trying to force Trump to resign. So they, pushed a bunch of these sanctions on the U.S. economy that, caused tens of thousands of people to die in the United States. That would be kind of a similar scenario. Cutting the government off from revenues from its oil reserves, the largest in the world, has amounted to a death sentence for tens of thousands of Venezuelans per year, Arriaza said in a 60-page brief he presented to the ICC. This week, Venezuela gave up rights to its own oil in order to keep the economy afloat. Venezuelan officials said the country is part of the court, said that since the country is part of the court, crimes against humanity within its borders fall under its jurisdiction as qualified as war crimes. I agree. Let's see. Yeah, the Center for Economic Policy Research reported last year that 300,000 people were estimated to be at risk due to lack of access to medical treatment resulting from sanctions, including 80,000 HIV positive people, 16,000 cancer patients, and 16 people in need of dialysis. So this is, again, it's not hurting the government of Venezuela. It's not hurting the Maduro administration. It's hurting the most vulnerable and marginalized people within the Venezuelan civilian population, people with HIV, people with cancer, people in need of dialysis. It's just sick and disgusting, and I hope the ICC takes the necessary measures to try to hold the Trump administration accountable in whatever way they can for this, because the Venezuelan government is right. Their foreign minister Arias is right. These are crimes against humanity. They should be investigated, and whatever, I guess, power the ICC has to sanction or condemn these sanctions, they should do for sure. So this is from the CEPR, the Center for Economic and Policy Research. We find that sanctions have inflicted and increasingly inflict very serious harm to human life and health, including an estimated more than 40,000 deaths from 2017 2018. And these sanctions would fit the definition of collective punishment of the civilian population as described both in the Geneva and Hague International Conventions, to which the U.S. is a signatory. They are also legal under international law and treaties which the U.S. has signed, and would also appear to violate U.S. laws as well. So it's just disgusting. That's why we really need to get somebody elected as president in the U.S. who's not going to, go around leveling these horribly draconian sanctions that lead to tens of thousands of deaths all over the world, in places like Venezuela, places like Iran. We need to be strengthening our diplomatic ties and relationships with, countries around the world, trying to find some common ground, not leveling these sanctions that are, making it so people with cancer and HIV and people who need dialysis aren't able to get the care and treatment they need. It's completely disgusting, unethical, immoral, and illegal, and it's just another reason not to support Trump and support Bernie Sanders instead. Peace.